I'd never heard of Marrowick Hollow before. No map showed it. Google had never heard of it. And when I asked the old gas station attendant outside of Reno if he'd ever been there, the man just chuckled and said, "That little place. Thought it was long gone." But it wasn't. It was right there, 22 miles off the highway, through a crooked stretch of pine forest, and then another 2 through a tunnel that looked like it had been carved out of the earth by hand. My wife, Lena, was the one who found the place. She'd been scrolling through some old travel forums looking for undiscovered romantic getaways when a comment caught her eye. The account had no profile picture, no post history. Just one post, dated 9 years ago. If you want peace, timeless beauty, and to forget everything else, try Marrowick Hollow. Just ask for a room at the Hollow's Rest Inn. Don't worry about reservations. They'll be expecting you. I should have taken that last sentence more seriously. We had just gotten married a week prior. Skipped the traditional ceremony, just a courthouse and 2 witnesses. The honeymoon was meant to be something quiet. No tours, no cities, no Wi-Fi. Lena always said she wanted to feel off the grid for once in her life. And this was definitely off the grid. But even as we drove, something felt strange. There were no other cars. Not a single soul walking the roadside. The air smelled faintly metallic, and the trees seemed just a little too still, like the wind passed over them without ever touching the leaves. "I love this already," Lena whispered from the passenger seat, eyes wide like a kid discovering Narnia. "It's like driving into another century." She wasn't wrong. And when we finally emerged from the tunnel, the first glimpse of the town made us both stop breathing for a second. It was beautiful, unreal. Victorian rooftops, cobblestone streets, gas lamps that glowed faintly even in daylight, shops with painted wooden signs like Butcher and Sons, Wesley's Apothecary, and a bookstore called Pages Forgotten. People walked slowly, smiling at one another, dressed like extras from an old movie. A boy tipped his straw hat to us. An old woman handed a passing girl a daisy, beaming like she'd just handed her the world. It was perfect. Too perfect. We parked by the town square, right beside a fountain shaped like a weeping angel. Its stone eyes trickled water that never seemed to splash. The plaque beneath it read, "Marrowick Hollow, for those who chose peace." As we stepped out of the car, the people looked at us. All at once, like they'd been waiting. Not staring in a threatening way, just expectant. A man in a vest and newsboy cap approached us. He looked around 50, with slick back hair and impossibly white teeth. "Mr. and Mrs. Allen," he said before I could even introduce myself. "Welcome to the Hollow. Your room's ready. Right this way." Lena looked at me, brows furrowed. "Did you call ahead?" "No," I whispered back, then turned to the man. "How did you know our names?" He just smiled wider. "Everyone knows everybody in Marrowick Hollow." And before we could say anything else, he was leading us toward a tall red inn at the end of the street. Its porch sagged slightly, yet the wood looked newly varnished. A sign hung above, "Hollow's Rest Inn, since 1871. Inside, the place smelled like lavender and wood polish. The wallpaper was dark blue with gold floral trim. A grandfather clock ticked softly in the lobby, but I couldn't see any hands on its face. "I've placed you in the Magnolia Room," the man said, handing me an old brass key. "Breakfast is at 7. Supper at 6. We don't do lunch here. Makes the mind restless." I blinked. "Excuse me." He simply laughed and stepped aside. Our room was on the 3rd floor. The key turned with a soft click, and the door creaked open like it had been waiting for years to move again. It was beautiful. White curtains, a fireplace, a 4-poster bed, a desk with a quill and ink pot instead of a pen. But something felt off. Not bad, just off. Like everything had been cleaned too thoroughly. Like someone had tried to remove time from the place, not just dust. That night, we walked around town. Everyone greeted us. Every face smiled just a little too long. Every voice was calm. Soft. Too soft. As the sun dipped behind the hills, the gas lamps came to life, casting the cobblestones in golden light. Lena held my arm and whispered, "I think we found it. The perfect place." I smiled back, but couldn't help glancing behind us. There were no cars, no antennas, no phone service, and somewhere in the distance, I swore I heard the faint echo of applause. I didn't sleep well that first night. It wasn't because of the bed, it was impossibly soft. Or the noise, there wasn't any. The inn was dead quiet after sundown. No creaks, No footsteps in the hallway, not even wind. It was the dreams. I don't remember much. Just flashes. The sound of leaves crunching beneath my feet. A circle of people in the dark, wearing masks of porcelain. And the sound of distant clapping, slow and rhythmic, like an audience watching a play they'd seen 100 times. When I woke up, my pillow was damp with sweat, and my neck ached like someone had been gripping it all night. Lena, on the other hand, looked refreshed. Radiant even. She stood by the window, sunlight outlining her silhouette like a halo. "You're gonna love the breakfast," she said, sipping from a steaming mug. They brought it to our door. Eggs, biscuits, something called marrow jam. Tastes like cinnamon and something else I can't place. I sat up slowly. "You didn't find it weird they knew when we'd be awake?" She shrugged, smiling. "It's just good hospitality. You said you wanted to get away, right?" I tried to shake off the unease. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe this is what peace felt like, uncomfortably quiet, like standing in a room after a loud concert, waiting for the ringing to stop. We took a walk after breakfast. The streets of Marrowick Hollow looked exactly the same as the evening before. Not a single thing out of place. Even the leaves on the trees barely moved, as if wind didn't exist here. The townspeople were out and about. Some swept their porches. Others sat in rocking chairs, sipping from ceramic mugs. But what struck me most was their faces. They were smiling. All of them. Wide, content smiles. No one looked tired. No one seemed busy or in a rush. A man polishing his windows waved at us and said, "Morning, Mr. Allen." I paused. "How do you know my name?" His smile didn't falter. "Why wouldn't I?" Lena tugged at my hand. "Stop being weird," she whispered, still smiling. But I could see something flicker in her eyes. A tiny seed of doubt. We passed a group of children playing with a hoop and stick. When one of them tripped, scraping his knee, he didn't cry. Just got up, laughed, and said, "Guess I'll try again." No tears. No frustration. Just that same, perfect calm. It wasn't human. At the corner of Hemlock Street, we found a small cafe with a chalkboard sign that read, "Smiles are free, but frowns cost double." I raised an eyebrow. Charming. Inside, the place was spotless. Not modern clean, but museum clean. Everything looked like it had been preserved from another era. Porcelain cups, doilies on every table, waitstaff in pressed white uniforms. A young woman greeted us. "Would you like a table for two, Mr. and Mrs. Allen?" I froze. "How?" "We know everyone here," she said sweetly, leading us to a window seat. "Just relax. You're safe in Marrowick Hollow." She said it like she was trying to convince herself. The cafe had no menu. We were served tea and biscuits without asking, and the other patrons, every last one of them, smiled the entire time they chewed. At one point, a man coughed too hard and spilled a bit of tea on his jacket. The entire cafe fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. He stopped mid-cough, sat up straight, and with wide eyes whispered, "I'm sorry." The waitress approached him, smiled gently, and said, "Would you like to go to the room?" His face went pale. "No, please." Her smile didn't change. The man stood up, slowly, reluctantly, and followed her through a small red door at the back of the cafe. I turned to Lena. "Did that just?" "Sure," she said. "Just eat. Please." I didn't ask anything else. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. Lena was still asleep, breathing softly beside me. But something had pulled me out of sleep. I wasn't sure what until I looked out the window. The townspeople were in the square, dozens of them, standing perfectly still beneath the gas lamps. Not moving, not speaking, just facing the same direction, toward the inn. Their mouths were closed, but they were still smiling. I backed away from the window and lay in bed, eyes wide open, heart pounding like war drums. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I didn't tell Lena what I saw. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But how do you explain waking up in the middle of the night to find dozens of smiling townsfolk just standing in the square, staring silently at your window? How do you say that without sounding insane? Instead, I asked her if she slept well. She said yes. Of course she did. At breakfast, we were served the same spread as the day before. Same silver trays, same lace napkins, same faint hint of lavender in the air. The jam even came in the same swirls on the toast, as if someone had replicated yesterday with surgical precision. I tried to bring it up casually. "Don't you think things feel a little too perfect here?" Lena shrugged. "Isn't that what we wanted? No stress, no traffic, no screens, just peace." I forced a smile and nodded. But in my head, a quiet voice whispered, "Peace doesn't repeat itself." That afternoon, I decided I needed space. Some air. I told Lena I was going to take a walk through the hills beyond the town. She kissed me on the cheek and told me to be back in time for supper. It sounded like a line from a play. Too rehearsed. Too final. The trail behind the inn led through the forest. The trees were tall and tightly packed, casting long shadows that shifted unnaturally when the wind blew. Birds chirped somewhere out of sight, but I never saw them. Not one. After walking for what felt like an hour, I stopped. I should have been far from the town by now. But when I turned around, there it was. The fountain. The weeping angel. The plaque reading, "For those who chose peace." I was back in the town square. I stood there for a full minute, blinking, trying to convince myself I had somehow turned around, that I had unknowingly looped back. So I tried again. This time I took the opposite path, toward the hills. I left small scratches on tree trunks with my keys, just in case. My phone still had no signal, but I used the compass app. I walked in a straight line for nearly 40 minutes. And still, Marrowick Hollow. Same square. Same silent townspeople, now casually waving at me as I emerged from the trees like I hadn't just vanished for over an hour. "Lovely day for a stroll," one of them said. My throat was dry. How long was I gone? The man tilted his head. "Why, you just stepped out, sir." No, that couldn't be right. I looked at my watch. Nearly 2 hours had passed. I could still feel the sweat drying on my back. My legs ached from walking. I could feel the blister forming on my heel. I hadn't imagined that. I returned to the inn and asked the front desk attendant, an elderly woman with clouded eyes, if there were any exits out of town besides the main road. She smiled. "There's only the road you came in on, dear. No need to wander." But I walked for over an hour. I should have reached the highway. Her smile didn't fade. "You should rest. You look tired." I clenched my jaw. "No, I'm asking you, where does the forest lead?" Her eyes seemed to shift, ever so slightly. "It leads back to where you belong." That night, I told Lena everything. The loop, the townspeople, the fact that no matter where I walked, I always ended up back here. She looked at me with tired eyes, the same way you'd look at a child who woke you up from a good dream. "Honey," she said gently, "you're just overwhelmed. You said you wanted to unplug, to disconnect. And now your brain's trying to find noise in the silence." "No," I said. "This isn't peace. It's a trap." Lena reached for my hand. "Please, let's just enjoy this. Just for a little longer." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because behind her, just outside our window, I could see the street again. And I swear to God, the same old man who waved at me in the square was standing there. Still smiling. Still waving. In the exact same way. I dreamed I was being buried alive. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. Physically. Cold hands pressed against my chest, my limbs. Rough soil scraped against my mouth. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't scream. I felt every grain of dirt as it poured over my face, clogging my nostrils, my eyes. And above me, dozens of smiling faces, unmoving, unblinking, watching with perfect serenity as I suffocated. And then, applause. A slow, deliberate clapping that echoed through the ground like thunder rolling in molasses. When I woke up, I was gasping for air. My throat was raw. My sheets soaked with sweat. My fingernails were packed with something gritty. I threw back the covers. Dirt. Actual dirt. Under my nails. Smudged on my arms and shirt. And there, along the side of my neck, a bruise shaped like a thumb. I stumbled into the bathroom and turned on the light. The mirror didn't lie. My eyes were bloodshot. My skin pale. I looked like I hadn't slept in days. And that bruise, it wasn't old. It was fresh. I touched it and winced. Had I hurt myself in my sleep? No, because when I checked the soles of my feet, I found soil caked between my toes. Lena was already downstairs when I came down. She looked perfect again. Hair done. Makeup subtle but flawless. Like a porcelain doll that had never known a bad day. "Rough night?" she asked, pouring me tea. I said nothing. I was too busy staring at the jam. That goddamn marrow jam. Same pattern. Same little glass bowl. Same floral edge napkin. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. "You don't remember anything?" I replied quietly. She tilted her head. "Like what?" "I was gone." She laughed. "You're sitting right here, honey." "No. I mean last night. I left the room. I must have. Look at me." I held out my hands. Showed her the dirt under my nails. She glanced at it, unconcerned. Maybe you sleepwalked. That's not normal. Neither is running around the woods looking for ghosts. I didn't say ghosts. She smiled sweetly. You didn't have to. I skipped breakfast. My stomach turned at the thought of food. Instead, I wandered. I didn't take the forest path again. I tried the streets, alleys, lanes between buildings. I followed the power lines, the storm drains, the old trolley track that seemed to run nowhere, and in behind a bakery with no back door. Every path, every single one, looped. Not metaphorically, literally. I would turn left, right, then left again, and find myself back at the fountain. The weeping angel. Its face was changing, I was sure of it now. The tears seemed deeper. The mouth just a little more open. I walked backwards for a while, just to confuse the pattern. Didn't work. The sky above never changed, either. Always a hazy blue. Not quite sunny, not quite cloudy. Like someone had painted it on glass and lit it from behind. And then I saw her. The girl. She stood at the edge of town, just beyond the old mill. Pale, barefoot, wearing a white nightgown. Maybe 10 or 11 years old. She stared at me without blinking, arms limp at her sides, expression blank. I walked toward her slowly. She didn't move. When I got close enough, I opened my mouth to speak. She put a finger to her lips. Shoo. Then turned and ran. Not into the woods. Into the ground. The earth split open like fabric, and she dove into it as if it were water. The soil rippled for a moment, then lay still. I stood there for a full minute, unable to process what I'd seen. I looked around. No one else was there. The street was empty. But behind me, somewhere deep in the trees, I heard the clapping again. Slow. Deliberate. Patient. When I returned to the inn, I found a note on my pillow. The handwriting was elegant. Cursive. Flowing black ink. Some roots run deeper than you think. The director. I didn't know who that was. I didn't want to know. That night, I didn't sleep. I locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle. I turned every light on. But still, sometime around 2 a.m., I must have blacked out, because I woke up again on the floor, my mouth full of dirt. There were muddy footprints leading away from the bed, and written on the mirror in something dark, maybe mud, maybe worse, were 4 words. See you next curtain. The town had eyes. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean it literally. By the 5th day, I started noticing movement behind the curtains. Quick shifts. Silhouettes that froze the second I turned to look. Every window, every damn window, seemed to have something behind it. Watching, listening, waiting. And at night, the whispers started. Faint at first, like a breeze rustling the edge of your sanity. But soon, I could make out words. Or at least, what passed for words. They came from the walls, the vents, the cracks between the floorboards. Not ready yet. He sees too much. Cut his lines. I tried stuffing my ears with tissues, wrapping a towel around my head, even blaring static from an old radio I found in the closet. Didn't matter. The whispers weren't just sound. They were intent. A presence that snaked into your thoughts and coiled around them like ivy. On the 6th morning, I decided to leave. Really leave. I packed what little we'd brought, went down to the front desk, and demanded a ride. We'd like to check out, I told the same silver-haired woman who'd smiled at me every day. Now, she blinked slowly. Your stay isn't over. I don't care. We're leaving. Her eyes didn't even twitch. There is no early checkout, sir. I leaned in. Then I'll walk. I don't care if it takes me days. The woman looked past me, toward the window. It's not the walking that's the problem. I followed her gaze. And for the first time, I saw it. The people, standing on the street outside. Dozens of them. All perfectly still, arms at their sides, faces blank. No smiles this time. Just eyes. Dozens of unblinking eyes, all fixed on me. Back upstairs, Lena was humming. She sat at the desk, brushing her hair with slow, rhythmic strokes. The same exact motion. Over and over. As if rehearsed. Lena. I said softly. She didn't turn. I think we're in trouble. Still brushing. Lena. Finally, she turned. And when she smiled, my stomach dropped. It wasn't her smile. Not the one I knew. This one was too tight. Too wide. It stretched her face like wax melting under a slow flame. You're not supposed to say that, she whispered. What? You're supposed to love it here. That's your role. I backed away. She blinked slowly. You're making this harder for all of us. All of who? Lena, or whatever wore her face, stood up. They can hear you. You should go before they rewrite you. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of the bathroom with the lights off, clutching the brass key to the Magnolia room in one hand and a shaving razor in the other. Not as a weapon, just something real, something mine. The whispers didn't come through the walls anymore. They came from the mirrors. I caught them once, just barely. A flicker of movement in the reflection. A mouth, forming my name. Eyes that didn't match mine. They were wet, red, full of hunger. Stay still, the voice said. We're adjusting your lines. I shattered the mirror. My scream brought no one. Not even Lena. At sunrise, I crept through the hallway of the inn. I passed closed doors that I'd never seen guests enter or exit. No one checked in. No one checked out. Yet footsteps echoed behind them. And from one door, room 6, I heard crying. Not loud. Not desperate. Controlled. Like someone was being told to cry, but only just enough. I ran. Out the lobby, past the fountain, through the market square. The people watched me, unmoving, their heads all turning in perfect synchronization as I passed. I screamed at them. What do you want from me? They didn't answer, but I saw their lips moving. All of them, saying the same word. Again, I returned to the inn only because I had nowhere else to go. When I entered the room, Lena was gone. Her brush lay broken on the desk, bristles scattered like shed hair. But something else was waiting for me. Pinned to the wall above our bed was a poster. Old, faded, and cracked around the edges. It looked like it belonged in a theater lobby from a century ago. Marrowick Hollow Playhouse. Now casting, new role, the doubter. Rehearsals begin at sundown. I didn't go to supper that night. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't move from the chair I'd dragged to face the door, holding that old, cracked theater poster in my lap like a warning label from some cursed object. Now casting, new role, the doubter. Rehearsals begin at sundown. And outside, like clockwork, the gas lamps began to flicker to life. I could hear them moving again. Not footsteps. Blocking. The creak of boards. The sliding of fabric. Furniture being rearranged. As if the entire town was being shifted around me, like stagehands resetting the scene before Act 2. At exactly 9:13 p.m., someone knocked on the door. Not a polite knock. A flat-palm thud, heavy and rhythmic, like a metronome marking the tempo of a play I didn't want to be part of. I didn't answer. A slip of paper slid under the door. Exit interview requested. South edge of town. Come alone. There was no signature. No name. Just that clean, perfect handwriting I now associated with them. I should have burned it. Ignored it. But something inside me, some rotting curiosity, needed to know who or what had asked for me. So I went. The south edge of town was empty. The shops gave way to crooked fences and gnarled trees, lit faintly by a single crooked lamppost that hummed like it was alive. Beneath it stood a man. Or at least, I think he was a man. He wore a coat stitched together from pieces of old stage curtains. His skin looked gray, too tight over bone. And where his eyes should have been, there were only smooth indentations. Hollow sockets, sealed shut with waxy skin. He turned to face me anyway, as if he could see. I was once like you, he rasped. His voice was raw, as though dragged across gravel. New, curious, resistant. I took a step back. Who are you? They call me the Observer. Before I watched too long, I glanced around. What is this place? What is Marrowick Hollow? His lipless mouth twitched. A play. A loop. A prison for minds that don't follow the script. Why us? You answered the call. He lifted a gloved hand and mimed holding a phone. You clicked. You read. You believed. I shook my head. I didn't believe anything. We were just looking for quiet. And they gave you quiet. Manufactured peace. A town that never changes. A story that never ends. I felt my breath quicken. We can leave. He laughed then. A sound like paper tearing in the wind. No one leaves. You don't walk away from a stage once the lights are up. Not without consequence. I tried to hold his gaze, though there were no eyes to meet. What happens if I don't play along? He went still. His head tilted. They erase you. Line by line. Memory by memory. Until you're no longer a person, just a role. He leaned closer. I forgot my name 134 performances ago. My mouth went dry. Then why meet me? Why tell me this? Because the script is fragile. It can be broken, but only from inside. He reached into his coat and pulled out something small, a metal object. Old. Worn. It was a key. But not just any key. It was identical to the one from the Magnolia room. Except this one had no number. No label. and the teeth had been filed smooth. "Take it," he whispered. "When the clock strikes 13, you'll know what to do." I hesitated. "What does it unlock?" He smiled a terrible, sunken smile. "Not a door, a queue." When I looked down to take the key, it was warm in my hand. When I looked back up, the man was gone. No footsteps, no retreating shadow, just an empty street and a broken lamppost, flickering like a dying heartbeat. I returned to the inn with the key clenched tight in my fist. I didn't speak to Lena. I didn't explain. She was humming again, but the melody was different this time. Wrong. Out of sync, like a vinyl record spinning backward. I went to the mirror and looked myself in the eyes. And for a split second, they weren't my eyes. I waited until Lena was asleep. Or at least, whatever wore her skin was no longer humming. She'd stopped brushing her hair around midnight and crawled into bed with a grace too deliberate, like a dancer hitting her mark. Her breathing slowed. Her body stilled. But even then, I didn't trust her. I waited an hour longer in the dark, listening, watching. Then I slipped the unmarked key from my pocket and stepped out of the Magnolia room. The hallway was quiet. Not empty quiet, but listening quiet. Every floorboard creaked like it was echoing to someone. Like each step I took was being marked, timed, filed under a scene number. I descended the stairs and passed the front desk. The old woman wasn't there. Instead, a marionette sat in her chair. Its glassy eyes stared straight ahead, arms propped unnaturally on the desk. A paper pinned to its chest read, "Intermission, please wait." I didn't stop. I followed instinct more than logic, guided by the key's strange warmth, pulsing faintly in my fist like a heartbeat. It tugged me toward the eastern wing of the inn, down a hall I hadn't noticed before. There were no lights, no windows, just a door at the end with a cracked brass plate that read, "Props and personnel, authorized roles only." I inserted the key. It turned without resistance. The room beyond wasn't a room. It was a theater backstage, vast and surreal, like someone had stitched together the storage closets of 1,000 haunted playhouses and filled them with remnants of forgotten performances. There were racks of identical clothing, dozens of versions of the same suit, the same red dress, the same apron with matching floral stains. All worn, all arranged like costumes waiting for their cue. Scripts lay scattered on a long oak table, pages fluttering even though no wind blew. Each page had one word on it: smile. Hundreds of them. On the far wall, portraits hung in perfect rows, photographs of people I'd passed on the street. The butcher, the baker, the man with the hoop and stick, all grinning the same unnatural grin. But as I stepped closer, I realized something horrifying. Their eyes were scratched out, each one, as if even their images weren't allowed to see. I turned a corner and found the surveillance room. Old-fashioned TVs stacked like totems hummed quietly, each screen showing a different part of town. Not lived, staged, rehearsed. In one, Lena poured tea over and over into an empty cup, smiling at no one. In another, I watched myself, walking, still clutching the key. I staggered back, looked around the walls. Hundreds of cameras. Small black domes embedded in corners, inside lampshades, behind picture frames. The entire town was a set. Every room a stage. A whisper slid through the room, like breath blown across my ear. "Do not look directly at the audience." I turned and saw a wall of mirrors. No reflections, just darkness. And within that darkness, rows and rows of eyes. They were watching, but not with curiosity, with hunger. Suddenly, one of the screens began to flicker. Then another. One by one, each image dissolved into static, except one. A stage. Empty. A single spotlight shone on the center, illuminating a dusty floor and a microphone. A text faded onto the screen. "Final audition. The doubter. Please report to the rotunda." Below it, a countdown began. 59:59. I ran. Through the winding hall, past the props, the racks of faces and fabric, up the stairs, back into the night air. The town square was empty now. Every gas lamp flickered like it was breathing. The shadows between the buildings seemed to lean toward me. I looked up and noticed every window was lit. But not with light, with eyes. The town wasn't empty. It had become the audience. And I was the only one left on stage. As I stumbled into the rotunda, the domed building I once mistook for an opera house, I felt a shift, like walking through a membrane. The air was thicker, charged. The room was circular, The ceiling painted with scenes of twisted plays, actors hanging by strings, directors with mouths sewn shut, spotlights shaped like watching gods. In the center stood a single chair, and next to it, a man, the director, dressed in all black, no face, just a porcelain mask with a smile carved too wide. He gestured to the chair without speaking. I didn't move. He tilted his head. Behind him, I saw movement. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of those who used to be people, now just figures in stage clothes, their mouths stitched open, scripts nailed to their chests. The director raised one hand and snapped his fingers. The spotlight hit me. A voice, not mine, not anyone's, echoed from above. Begin scene 7. Roll, the doubter. Action, break. I didn't remember agreeing to anything. But when I opened my eyes, I was already marching. The sun was high, too high, suspended in a sky that didn't move, didn't dim. The shadows beneath me didn't stretch, didn't shift. Everything felt paused, like the whole town was stuck between seconds. And I was moving through it, step after step, down Main Street, wearing a costume, a theatrical robe stitched from pages, real, fragile paper. The text across it shifted as I walked. Dialogue, stage directions, names I didn't recognize. The crowd clapped in perfect rhythm. Lena walked beside me. Her face was painted white, her lips blood red. Her hands held a paper parasol that never cast a shadow. She whispered without moving her mouth. Don't break the rhythm. They're watching. I looked around. The crowd lined the street. Hundreds of them. Their smiles wider now. Cracked. Split at the corners. They waved slowly, their movements like broken puppets held by invisible strings. They weren't cheering. They were recording. Each face blurred, yet each held a glimmer of something behind the eyes, awareness, expectation, control. And then I saw them. The other roles. Behind us, a towering man in a butcher's apron, mask fused to his skin, the provider. To my right, a young girl with empty sockets where her eyes should be, holding a leash with no dog, the innocent. Above, drifting silently from the rooftops, a figure in a feathered cloak with no legs, gliding on unseen wires, the witness. All of us marching. All of us trapped in a story we didn't write. We turned onto Marrowick Boulevard, and I finally saw it. The grand stage. Massive. Gothic. Its arches twisted like bone and smoke. Curtains of red velvet hung limp in the still air, and just above them, carved into black stone. The play is the price. The director stood there, waiting. Behind him, rows of seats stretched back into the darkness. But no one sat in them. Just empty chairs. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Yet I still felt watched. From somewhere beyond the curtains. Behind the sky. Below the town. Lena leaned toward me again. Her voice cracked like dry leaves. When the music stops, don't stop. Not even then. That's when the rewrite begins. A brass band played at the edge of the stage. Not with joy. With precision. Every note timed. Measured. Controlled. Each instrument bore no name. Only a number burned into the wood. As we reached the foot of the stage, the procession slowed. One by one, the other rolls peeled off. Bowed. Disappeared into trapdoors, side passages, crawling under the foundation like worms returning to soil. Until only I remained. I stood at center. Alone. A voice boomed from everywhere and nowhere. The doubter has taken his place. The crowd bowed as one. The director gestured. The curtains behind him began to rise. And I saw the back wall of the stage. Not wood, not brick, but mirrors. Thousands of them. Each one showed a different version of me. One screamed. One wept. One stood perfectly still, already broken. One was on his knees, blood leaking from his eyes, whispering something I couldn't hear. Choose, the director said. I didn't. I couldn't. But something inside me already had. The mirrors shattered all at once. And behind them, there was no wall. Only an audience. Not human. Rows upon rows of blank-faced entities. Pale. Faceless. Yet still watching. Still leaning forward. Their presence slammed into my skull like static and pressure and weight. They had no eyes. But they saw. They had no mouths. But they hungered. The music stopped. Silence fell like a blade. And I remembered Lena's warning. When the music stops, don't stop. So I stepped forward. Off the stage. Down. Into the pit. Into the black. And for one awful moment, I felt the eyes turn away. Not because I escaped, but because they were bored. They already knew how it would end. There was a road. I don't know when it appeared. Maybe it had always been there, coiled behind the fog like a viper waiting to strike. It began behind the grand stage, cutting through the woods like a scar. No signs, no pavement, just gravel and silence stretching into the horizon. I don't remember walking toward it. One moment, I was staring into the eyes of that faceless audience. The next, I was standing at the threshold of escape. My hands trembled. My heart pounded like a war drum. But I stepped forward, and something stepped with me. The trees whispered as I passed. But not like before, not the gibberish mutterings of forgotten roles. This time, they spoke my name. Daniel. Daniel, wait. You've forgotten your cue. I kept walking. The farther I got, the quieter the town became behind me. No wind. No insects. Just the crunch of my footsteps and the growing sense that something had stopped breathing. Then I saw it. A toll booth. Small. Wooden. Out of place. Like someone had pulled it from a highway rest stop in 1950 and dropped it here for a joke no one would laugh at. Inside sat a man in a black suit, face covered with a burlap sack. No holes. No stitching. Just the sagging imprint of something moving underneath. He didn't look up. He just raised one hand and said, "Payment required." I stepped closer. For what? He tilted his head. To leave. Nothing exits without balance. All things taken must be returned. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wallet. Cash. ID. Old receipts. He didn't move. I offered the key. The script page robe. The cracked brass room tag from the Magnolia room. Still nothing. No. We do not want props. We want substance. I felt sick. What do you want? He finally looked at me. The burlap twitched. And in a voice not his own, not even human, he whispered, "Give us something you cannot live without." I staggered back. "No." "Then remain," he said. "You may return to your lines." "I want out." He spread his arms. "Then give." Behind me, I heard her voice. Lena. She was standing at the edge of the trees, still in her white-painted face, still holding that parasol that never cast a shadow. "You can give them me," she said softly. My mouth went dry. "You're not real. Neither are you. Not anymore." She stepped forward, brushing hair from her face. "But they'll accept it. Me. The idea of me. The part of you that still believes I was ever yours." I looked to the toll booth. The sack-faced man nodded. "The heart. The root. The last truth you carry. It is acceptable payment." I dropped to my knees. "No. Please. There has to be something else." Lena knelt beside me. Her hand was cold. "You won't remember me," she whispered. "Not my laugh. Not our vows. Not the way I said your name when I was scared. But you'll survive. You'll get out." I wept. Truly. Not from fear. From the crushing knowledge that she was right. When I stood again, the booth door was open. The man stepped aside. No more words. No nod of approval. Just a single scrap of paper pinned to the side of the toll gate. One exit. One cost. No refunds. I walked past. And as I crossed the invisible line between Marrowick Hollow and whatever waited beyond, I felt something peel away inside me. Not pain. Just absence. Like a word I once knew. A name I once loved. A memory now blank. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital near Carson City. They said I was found wandering along Route 431, dehydrated and talking nonsense. I had no ID. No phone. No memory of how I got there. The doctors told me I'd likely experienced a fugue state. Stress-related amnesia. Something psychological. They were kind. Polite. And for the most part, I agreed with their diagnosis. But sometimes, late at night, when I look into mirrors, I swear I see stage lights behind my eyes. And when I pass by old theaters or hear distant applause, I feel something stir in my chest. Not longing. Not fear. Just emptiness. Like I left something behind. Or someone. I can't remember her name. But I think I loved her once. It started with her voice. 3 weeks after I left the hospital, I was back in my apartment in Reno, trying to patch my life back together. My job was miraculously still intact. I told my boss I'd had a nervous episode, and he didn't ask questions. People don't when you say the right combination of trauma and therapy. But late one night, as I lay half asleep on the couch, I heard it. "Daniel." Soft. Familiar. Right behind me. I shot up, heart racing, mouth dry. No one was there. I turned on every light. Checked the locks. The windows. Every shadow. But I knew that voice. Every vowel. Every breath. It was her. The next day, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a single page. Handwritten. The director appreciates your performance. However, the audience has demanded a sequel. I burned it in the sink. Watched the flames crawl up the page like eager fingers. But that night, the whisper returned. Daniel. I made coffee. I found the cup waiting on the kitchen counter. Black. No steam. But warm. The mug was one I didn't own. It had a painted name on the side. Lena. I told myself it was trauma. Leftover ghosts. The mind clinging to echoes. But then I found the photo. Wedged behind a book on the shelf. An old Polaroid. Faded. Framed by fraying edges. Me and Lena. But the backdrop wasn't Reno. It wasn't anywhere I recognized. The buildings were too neat. The sky too still. In the background, a fountain. Stone. Angel. Weeping. And behind the fountain, a man in black, watching from the corner. His face blurred. His stance perfect. Like someone posing for a memory. The hallucinations became more precise after that. I'd see her reflection in windows. Her figure passing through the hallway. Her toothbrush in the holder. Her shoes by the door. But the real breaking point? She knocked. One night. 3:07 a.m. 3 slow knocks. I knew it was her. Even before I opened the door. And there she stood. Wearing the same dress from the first night in Marrowick. White. Untouched. A parasol resting at her side. Hi, sweetheart, she said. I didn't move. Aren't you going to let your wife in? My wife is dead, I whispered. Or worse. She smiled. Soft. Almost kind. I'm not here to hurt you, Daniel. I'm just here to finish the scene. I slammed the door. Deadbolted. Pushed the dresser in front. And I waited. Holding my breath for hours. But no second knock came. Just applause. Distant. Echoing. From the vents. From the drains. From somewhere beneath me. The next morning, everything was normal. No Lena. No knocks. No mug. But I noticed the fridge had a note on it. A sticky yellow square. Act 2. Domestic Dissonance. Tonight's guest, the doubter's doubt. I tore it down and flushed it. But new ones kept appearing. In the mirror. On my phone screen. Written in fog on the bathroom glass. At 11:58 p.m., I heard the front door unlock itself. No one entered. But the sound of a woman humming drifted down the hallway. And I realized something awful. She never left. Because I brought her with me. Because to leave Marrowick Hollow is to become it. And now the performance wasn't just in that cursed town. It was here. In my home. In my life. In me. I looked in the mirror again. Noticed the edges of my smile had begun to crack. Too wide. Too tight. And behind me, a script. Floating on the table. The title bold and unmistakable. The Town That Watches, Season 2. Starring Daniel as himself. With a special returning role, Lena. It was the dirt. It had always been the dirt. Ever since I left Marrowick Hollow, I avoided it. Washed it from my shoes, scraped it from under my nails, vacuumed it out of corners where it shouldn't have been. But it always came back. In the folds of bedsheets. In the sink. In my mouth when I woke up, choking. So I gave in. I went to the place where I first heard her voice again. The stretch of desert outside Reno, where they found me wandering. A patch of earth that felt too quiet. Too smooth. The ground pulsed faintly beneath my feet. Like it was waiting. So I brought a shovel. At first, the digging was simple. Dry earth. Hard-packed gravel. Fragments of old roots. But the deeper I went, the stranger it got. The soil turned black. Soft. Warm. Like it had been fed. At 6 feet down, I hit something solid. Not rock. Wood. Old, warped, and painted in faded red. I scraped around the edges. A box. A coffin. And carved on its lid, etched in looping script, were the words. Here lies Daniel, the first doubter. Performance date, unknown. I stepped back. Stumbled. This had to be a joke. A prop. A hallucination. But the name was mine. Exactly mine. Full name. Date of birth. Even the handwriting looked familiar. I opened the coffin. Inside wasn't a body. It was a costume. A robe of woven film strips. Each one showing a different moment of my life. Me as a child. Me, proposing to Lena. Me, waking in the hospital. And beneath the robe, a mask. Porcelain. Painted smile. A mirror where the eyes should be. As I stared into it, I saw myself. Not the man I was. But the roles I'd played. Daniel the husband. Daniel the fugitive. Daniel the doubter. Each one layered like paint. And behind them, nothing. No core. No self. Just an empty stage. A wind rose behind me. but I was underground. And still, I heard the whisper. All versions return home. When I turned, the desert was gone. The sky above was painted canvas. Gas lamps flickered on in a perfect circle. Rows of red seats stared down into the pit. And up on the edge of the hole, staring down with stitched lips, stood the director. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He only dropped something. It landed softly beside me. A fresh script. Title page blank. No roles listed. Just 2 words. Dig deeper. I kept going. Past the coffin. Through the bottom of the pit. The soil was liquid now. Ink black. Smelling of burnt paper and rain. As I descended, flashes of memory assaulted me. Lena smiling by the window. The director handing me a key. My own reflection clapping, slowly, endlessly. The farther I went, the more familiar everything felt. Until I hit stone. Not natural. A foundation. Etched in it was a date. July 22nd, 1962. And a name I didn't recognize, but somehow knew was mine. Daniel Whitmore. I screamed. Not in fear. In recognition. This wasn't my first time here. This wasn't the first performance. It was just the most recent rewrite. They didn't choose me. They restored me. When I clawed my way back to the surface, the world had changed. My phone buzzed with dozens of missed calls, from names I didn't recognize, but felt like lines from a script. My ID said Daniel Whitmore. My driver's license photo wore a faint, painted smile. And Lena was waiting in the car, wearing a red dress, holding a new parasol. You remembered your mark, she said. I couldn't answer, because I wasn't sure if I was leaving the stage or re-entering it. The sky never dimmed. It wasn't night. Wasn't day. Just an endless soft glow, like the moment before a stage light fades to black. I stood at the edge of Marrowick Hollow once more. But now I understood. It was never a place. It was a script. And I had been playing my part perfectly. The streets were empty. No children. No whispers. No director. Only Lena. She waited beside the fountain, the weeping angel behind her now eroded, not by time, but by repetition. Its face was smooth, featureless, a blank mask, just like the ones they wore backstage. They're ready, Lena said gently. It's time for your bow. I shook my head. No, I'm done. I dug through it all. I found the first performance. I found what I was. Yes, she smiled. You were Daniel Whitmore. You were Daniel Allen. You were the doubter. And now, she stepped closer, placed a rolled parchment in my hand. You're the ending. I looked down. The scroll trembled in my grip, bound by a red ribbon, wax seal shaped like an eye. I didn't open it. I didn't have to, because as soon as I held it, I remembered everything. The first time I entered Marrowick Hollow. The second, the 37th, the 205th. I had played this role before. So many versions of me had chosen different exits. Some refused the script. Some gave in too soon. Some never even realized they were acting. But this time I had made it to the final page. The rotunda waited. Empty stage. Open arch. The sky curled into itself like old film, burning at the edges. And above me, for the first time, the audience revealed itself. Not faces. Not creatures. Just eyes. Floating. Vast. Unblinking. Watching. Waiting. I stepped into the center of the stage. The moment I did, a microphone rose from the floor, antique, brass, wired into the void. My voice shook, but I spoke anyway. To the audience, I said, you've watched me fall apart 1,000 ways. You've written my pain, my doubt, my love. You gave me Lena. You took her away. You brought her back. You erased her. I looked up into the eyes. But this time I finish it. No encore. No revival. Just silence. I unrolled the script. It was blank, except for the final line. The doubter exits the stage. So I did. I turned, stepped to the edge, and walked off. Not into blackness. Not into light. Just off. No applause followed. No music rose. Just silence. True silence. And for the first time, in all my versions, all my rewrites, all my deaths and rebirths, I wasn't being watched. I wasn't being written. I was free.